in this film.
No, but
we want the sound. Yes.
The actual landing on Mars. Yeah.
No. Oh, the moon? Yeah. Yeah. But that's the way at the moment, but I haven't had that exposed to anything otherwise, but I guess it's got it. I just did hear a lecture on that. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I'd like to look into that book more. I don't know.
Yeah. These are messages dropping on the screen in both Russian and English. We see the atmospheric pressure of 0.7 atmospheres, which is pretty good pressure. And finally, when the ship lands, some creature is crawling in the dirt nearby, right in front of them. Obviously disturbed by the... Something like a mole. Jesus. Well, this is a supposed landing on Mars, shot from a landing probe.
it's very intoxicating.
The film has been shown only once in the United States in 1977 by a San Francisco station. And
But it was just like 1984. It was like George Orwell's 1934, or at least no, I don't mean that. I mean what's his face?
notice the
1939 War
shape
of
of
the Worlds.
the windows. I thought it is a fake landing from an earthly helicopter landing on the Earth, but I don't know of any. I'll be very glad of somebody with helicopter experience that can find an American helicopter with a front window of this shape, although I highly doubt it. It is possible. Now, if we remember Bob Emenegger's film, UFOs, It Has Begun, on the 1989 UFO Symposium in Las Vegas, John Lear said that talking with Bob Emenegger about, remember there was a dramatized sequence of a UFO landing on Holloman Air Force Base in the early 50s. And John Lear asked Bob Emenegger, how did they do that shot? It's about a 7-second segment. It's very nice. The UFO comes from atop of the mountain and dives steeply to land on the tarmac. And Bob Emenegger said, no, this is the real sequence. They just allowed us to include that much. So this is one instance where they would weave into a fictional story some real fact or even some real footage. Then there have been persistent rumors that a wealthy Southern California movie producer has been shown actual footage of a landing of a bigger ship, and then that ended up with a production of a major fiction film on this topic, which is probably the story behind the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So there is a pattern of weaving real footage into fictional or semi-fictional scenarios, and this is the ground that I approached this film. And then further on I discovered many technical details into it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just to play the devil's advocate here. We are finding our governments have lied to us on virtually everything. They tell us there's no life on Mars. I realize that this is very obvious life there, but how do we know with absolute certainty that there is no life on Mars?
Very good question. I had the same question about the moon, but from Fred Stecklin's book, you can clearly see the green vegetation at some areas on the moon.
Well, tell us more about that. Both the moon and Mars.
No. It's a very interesting arrangement here. Whenever a camera is sent to a different world, it sits on top of the craft. A lens will be sticking out, but never ever was camera put inside a room with a window. You don't send an unmanned craft to Mars where the camera is inside the room, behind the window. Why? Because it's too expensive, the craft is too big.
We're getting a good picture here, and coming
He said that you had to fit it to an IC something 40,
yeah.
and you get a jukebox. Does that mean anything?
We've heard of it.
And he said that you've got to play back Valentine's tape. That's all.
We connected up the printed circuit and played once again the videotape that Sir William Valentine, before his death, had sent to his friend, John Hendry. This time, we obtained an acceptable picture, which you are now about to see as we saw it. To be an authentic record of the first and secret landing on Mars by an unmanned space probe from Earth. We also believe the date given, May the 22nd, 1962, to be accurate. Clearly, the blanket of total security by which this information has been covered could only have been maintained by the active cooperation of governments at very high level. Equally clearly, there must have been powerful reasons why the true conditions on Mars, suitable as they appear to be for human habitat, have been kept secret. Indeed, the effort which has gone into persuading the rest of the world that the opposite is true argues that some operation of supreme importance has been going on beneath the security cover. We believe that that operation is Dr. Carl Gerstein's Alternative 3. Whether a human survival colony has already been established on Mars, or whether plans are still in preparation for its transportation from the moon to Mars, we don't know. But we put out this program tonight as a challenge to those who do know to tell us the truth. We regret if the implications of what you've seen are less than optimistic for the future of life on this planet. It has been our task, however, to present the facts as we understand them and to await the response. Good night.
I want to give you some additional information out of my research about Alternative 3. Does it work? I want to give you some additional information out of my investigation about Alternative 3 and life on Mars. Number one, Alternative 3 mentioned a first rocket start to Mars in February 1960 or 62. With a big explosion where many scientists in Russia died. This one was confirmed in February 1991 by the Russian news agency TASS in an article published in many British newspapers. Tony Dodd has it. He has sent me a copy. Whoever is interested in deeper investigation can get a copy from me or Tony Dodd in England. So this is a matter of fact. This point in Alternative 3 is definitely true. February 1962, I believe. I'm not sure. Second, we had a conference in September 1990 in Tallahassee in Florida of leading Mars investigators. And they all concluded that there is a big possibility that there is indeed life on Mars. It can be microorganisms, it can be hidden in the ice masses of the Antarctic regions, it can be underground in a warmer region, it can be everywhere. Third, the Viking lander in 1976 concluded out of, they had 3 experiments if there's life on Mars. Chemical ones and biological ones and whatever. 2 of them were positive, 1 negative. You can read it in a book published in German by the famous German science author. It is the German Carl Sagan, Johannes von Butler. He's a member of the Royal British Astronomical Society. 2 out of 3 experiments concluded there is life on Mars, organic life. I'm not talking about cities right now. We have cities on Mars, we have pyramids on Mars, we have a face on Mars, and a lot of structures. Number 4. They did the same experiment in the Antarctic region of our planet. The result was 2 to 1 light on Mars. So if we compare it, it is obvious that there could be indeed life on Mars. Another thing, my friend Fred Steckling from Vista, California, whoever is interested in more investigation can write him, has written a fine article in one American magazine, I don't know for sure, about life on Mars. He is a meteorologist, and he checked all the data we got on Mars, and some of them are definitely wrong, because one thing is not, you cannot bring an order with another thing, another data, and whatever. They took pictures of nebula on Mars and on Moon, fog on Mars and on Moon. He published pictures in his book. We discovered somebody else on Moon, somebody mentioned the Moon here, of cloud formations over the rims of moon craters, and this kind of things. Information that there is indeed an atmosphere on the Moon was released by NASA after the first landing on Moon, Apollo 11, in July 1969. all this indicates that there is indeed a big cover-up. And last night I spoke about George Adamski. Today we got a confirmation of George Adamski by a lady from Venus. And now we are getting a confirmation of George Adamski by material about Moon, about Mars, and about other planets. We shouldn't believe disinformation spread by official NASA scientists. And we should be very critical in the analysis of these data. If you read Zachariah Sitchin's new book, Genesis Revisited, you find a lot of more information about the Mars. For example, the Russian Phobos probe sent to Mars in 1988, 1999 had the capability of infrared censoring of the Mars surface. And they discovered rectangular patterns on Mars. Zachariah told me he saw the movie, and he's making a movie indeed with a Zurich movie producer, and they got the original Phobos 2 films from the Soviet Space Agency in Moscow. And you can see rectangular patterns like Los Angeles from the air. That's what Zachariah mentioned. So there is indeed a strong indication that there is, like David Bowie asked, is there life on Mars? Yes, there is life on Mars. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Vladimir.
The first suspicious thing is that the camera is inside a cabin and it's looking through a window. The second suspicious thing is look at the curvature of the window. It shows that it is a circular craft and the lower diameter is larger than the upper diameter. So it's like a cupola type craft, which is a very familiar circular shape of a flying saucer. Let's go on. The film is patched out of several sequences. The thing flies low, then the next sequence is, the thing is high up in the sky, then it flies low. This is the reason for... Then we are up again. But look at this, look where the horizon is.
About a 45-degree bank to the right.
We are making a 45-degree banking maneuver at almost 180-degree turn. This is probably the biggest argument against a standard Earth probe with a chemical thruster engine similar to the one that landed on the moon is used here, because the lunar lander can search for a place only along a straight line, and by pressing on or off on the throttle, you choose a closer or a further away place to avoid the rocks. But you can never make turns, and not at all a sharp banking turn and almost going back. Also, the acceleration of the pilots for this to be a chemical thruster craft would crash them into the seas. These would be clouds. There is something like a that looks like a road here. You would see it in normal motion. Here's the road. With the air pressure at like 6.
Over 10 psig. 14.7,000 sea level, right? Times, what'd you say, 0.707?
No, these are millibars. These are millibars. This is an atmosphere. 1 atmosphere is 1,000 millibars. So we are having 7/10 of an atmosphere, 7/10 of a sea level pressure. So we are somewhere like
10.4 pounds per square inch.
so we are somewhere like a mile or something above sea level on the Earth. This is a pretty good atmosphere, breathable without any oxygen mass.
Like Denver.
Yeah.
Air pressure 707.7 millibars. Атмосфера давления 7 millibars.
Now there are several grammatical mistakes in the Russian language. I think these are artists. These are playing the Russian role because they do some grammatical mistakes that the Russians do.
Stand by for landing, Curacao. Stand by. Мы достигли. Hallelujah. We're My God, what is that?
Now, when the saucer landed, if this were chemical thruster engine with a soft soil like this one so that a mole could dive through it, there would be a lot of dust flying around. There is not a speck of dust flying, which is a typical case of an anti-gravity device, softly landing without moving a particle. Something else that is very important here, which is difficult to see. Observe at the moment of landing, the camera would shake, the edge of the screen would shake a little bit relative to the window, which shows that the camera is on a tripod inside the cabin and not fixed firmly to the body of the craft. This would never happen if this was a firmly attached camera on an unmanned landing probe. My suspicion is that this is a landing probe and that the crew and the source of the conversation is inside the craft and not elsewhere on the moon or here on the ground. And you can see the shaking of the camera relative to the frame of the window.
My God, what is that? Something moving. Something moved there. Boy, if they ever take the wrap off this thing, it's going to be the biggest date in history. 22nd May, 1962. We're on the planet Mars, and we have life. Замечательно! Отлично! Поздравляем! Наконец-то!
We believe that to be an authentic record of the first and secret landing on Mars by an unmanned space probe from Earth. We also believe the date given, May the 22nd, 1962, to be accurate.
It is still open for debate, but for myself, I have found several very serious technical clues that would have surely been overlooked by a crew imitating this sequence. I have an intuitive feeling that very often some real footage or real facts are artfully woven into a fictional scenario with the purpose of educating the public, because sooner or later the technological advances of the secret government would become so far ahead and away from society that people would experience tremendous stress when they are recruited into the secret system to work for them. And this is something that they cannot afford to happen. It would be just a loss of too much money. Very briefly, I would comment on the presentation that Mr. Albilik did at the Whole Life Expo in Pasadena this year. Mr. Bilik is a physicist, has degrees from the best universities the government was shooting for the optical and radar invisibility, and they ended up with time travel, teleportation, and throughportation. I was sitting amazed at the talk that he gave. It was very interesting because at the end of his talk, I had a feeling similar to the feeling of the first civilian leaders that were invited secretly to visit the crash saucers and the dead alien bodies. And we know of their comments that they made. I had the feeling that the world has ended with finite, how was it said? Basically the stress that they were experiencing. And after our Bilik's talk, I was in a similar situation because, to summarize briefly what he said, basically, all the time travel fictional films that we have seen on television for the last 30, 40 years are true. The Germans developed time travel during the war, then the Navy did it immediately after the war. The Philadelphia experiment was resumed much later with a great success. The government has traveled 100,000 years back in time and about 1 million years forward in time. That our stealth bombers, fighters, and nuclear air carriers are equipped with the Philadelphia technology. If you remember the fictional film, The Final Countdown, about the nuclear air carrier going back in time by mistake through a dimensional time warp, cyclone, and ending up close to Pearl Harbor before the Japanese attack. Basically, these are things that are real and that all nuclear carriers are equipped to do. Something else, the physics that we know of, basically the Einsteinian physics, is just a kindergarten physics. After the Top Guns graduate from MIT and Caltech and signed the agreement with that to work for the secret bases, then they